Hey folks, welcome back to the DarkHorse Podcast, live stream 119, Q's coupled with A's. It's like that.
It is. It's like that. Okay, we're gonna be brief today, guys. Sorry about that. We're gonna abbreviate this. Just 45 minutes is the goal. Okay, let's get right into it. Discord question from this week. You have mentioned that you are not sure who or what are the forces working so hard to suppress certain COVID-related information. Off camera, are you talking with people to try to figure that out? Any headway? Under what conditions would you share new understandings of it? What are the risks of making this discourse public?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a whole lot of productivity to be had in trying to pursue that information. You know, it's obviously powerful forces. We know that because of the reach that they clearly have. We can tell more or less what they want. We could probably infer something about who they are based on the nature of what they're pursuing. But, you know, frankly, I think the best deal is to assume that you have some dedicated actors, you have some emergent properties, you don't know the admixture, but figuring out what it's trying to accomplish and how to reveal it is where the productivity is, figuring out who exactly. I'm not sure we're in a good position to do it, and I don't know how much value there would be. I mean, obviously, there is a large network of people downstream of Fauci.
Okay, we'll leave it there. There are a bunch of questions.
Wait. One thing. That said, there was some excellent work done that revealed where some of the suppression of the ivermectin story was coming from. It wasn't our work. That stuff is public. You can check out.
It was. It's got a great Substack. Nothing is working on my computer at the moment. I'm not going to be able to find it.
Okay, well, suffice it to say that take a look around. There was some good stuff that emerged over the last couple weeks about the Andrew Hill review.
Didn't we talk about this on air?
Meta-analysis that, we've talked about elements of it, but anyway, there is smoking gun-like evidence about who exactly was muscling Andrew Hill.
Yeah. I guess I thought that we had explicitly talked about this, but maybe that was a different forum. All right. Nothing is quite easy at the moment on this device. So now I have to find my way back to the Q&A. There are a lot of questions this week, a lot of comments, mostly from two people about Ukraine.
Okay.
And one of the people writing in is Ukrainian, and then one of them does not specify, but seems likely not. So I'm just going to read them all, but I guess I will preface it by saying what is clear is that almost no one actually has a good beat on what is going on, and that we are definitely in the realm of mis and disinformation and malinformation to some, depending on which government it is that you're speaking on behalf of. So that is, it's impossible for most of us to know the truth of what is going on. Someone who presents themselves as Sasha says, I am from Ukraine. RF, which I think means Russian forces, attacked us. History repeats itself with the genocide. Russian Federation, yeah, attacked us. History repeats itself with the genocide of Ukrainians, like Holodomor. I want to spread the word about Ukraine. Says then, so these are not in the right order, unfortunately, and I don't know how to get them in like the right chronological order. Hold on, maybe I can do it this way. Sorry. Sorry, guys. 20. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read all of Sasha's and then the one other long comment from the other person about Ukraine. Marxist ideas spread so wildly. When my Ukrainian father woke up from the bombings, a teen from the U.S. had written to say that the Ukrainians deserve it. He is a communist, the teen from the U.S. I'm somewhat extrapolating because I also received a letter from this person, so the language isn't totally clear in these comments. Continues. Oh, actually, so here's someone else writing in and say, does anyone else think that Zelensky is a warmonger with Smollett syndrome? That's Jesse Smollett, benefiting from the victimhood of war incentivized by the U.S. Instead of de-escalation, Zelensky responds, bring it on, in response to Putin's demands while his peeps die. The U.S. mainstream media promotes this defiance by conflating it with being a war hero and furthers the narrative by showing pictures of him in arms in a Hollywood-style fashion in the media. Instead of no-fly zones, he should de-escalate, evacuate, and negotiate. Sasha writes, if we surrender, there will be no peace. My family is on the killing list of Russian terrorists since 2014. We have no option but to fight. Mariupol is destroyed. My brother fights in Kiev. And I think that's it. Oh, wait, no. Poland, 1939. Ukraine, 2022. Please educate your followers on the history of World War II. So that's a lot of comments on Ukraine and Russia and the current situation. And
yep. I would just say the overarching sense that I have is being frog marched towards a narrative whose purpose I don't understand. And it doesn't mean that no aspects of what I'm being frog marched towards are correct. So I don't want to assume that I am being fed the opposite of the truth, but the sense. I
don't know this term, frog marched. Did you just make it up?
I hope not.
Okay. I
believe not. It's like perp walking, but for frogs. Okay. The sense that I have is that actually we have a hypnosis problem and that the population has been hypnotized. It didn't work on everybody, but there's an extent to which the hypnotist has you, and then he keeps choosing topics. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were hypnotized on COVID, and now people are hypnotized on Ukraine. It happened so rapidly, mm-hmm. and the level at which Americans are focused on war in Ukraine is conspicuous. Right. Yeah. It's one thing to be focused on a war. You know, we have had the experience of having wars that we were participants in which Americans were not focused. It was like it wasn't happening. The U.S.
has.
Yes.
We have not.
Right. No, Americans have been in this situation. And now we are in this opposite situation. And it is clearly about
there's always wars going on that, I mean, you know, that we aren't paying any attention to. But of course, a war in Europe.
No, but I mean wars in which we were partisans, in which we were fighting, in which Americans were not paying attention. This happened in the aftermath of 9/11, obviously.
In Iraq and in Afghanistan. Yeah.
Right. These became background. Mm-hmm. And this has been very foregrounded, even though we are not fighting in Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's quite a fair comparison because we're still in the early days. So, you know, years in, I'm not excusing any of this.
Yep.
But years in, yes, the fact that we still had American men and even some women fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq was backgrounded. But so too happens to every story after it goes on for a very long time.
I don't know that that's normal. I don't think that was true for Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I know less about Korea, but I don't think it was true for Korea either. Something has happened, and the way in which we get information has left us vulnerable to a hypnotist. And this hypnotist has, you know, there was a position that we were supposed to land in, right? Yeah. We were all supposed to have Ukrainian flags in our bios, and we were all supposed to imagine that Zelensky was a handsome hero who just so happens to be able to dance or something. And that, you know, Putin is a simple monster who had no reason other than avarice to attack Ukraine.
Right.
And
it's the comic bookification again.
Yeah.
Simple heroes, simple villains, simple superheroes, simple supervillains.
I think you nailed it. It's the comic bookification, which tells you that the story is serving a purpose that has nothing to do with informing us. And the idea that World War III, a potential nuclear exchange with Russia, is a possible outgrowth of such a thing. The parallels to the Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse. The whole thing is designed to get us to cheer for something. I don't know why I'm supposed to be cheering for it. I know that that the stakes here are incredibly high, and that ought to be dominating our thinking rather than a comic book version of, Bluto attacked Popeye.
No, and it is part of why I have found wisdom in Konstantin Kissin's analysis, half of the trigonometry duo, in part because he has family both in Russia and in Ukraine. And so he has both skin in the game, at least family-wise, and an ability and views, people close to him who feel opposed to other people close to him with regard to their analysis of what is going on. So he has people that he knows how to assess what they are saying, who are saying things that are the opposite of other people whom he knows how to assess what they are saying, and that provides a kind of lens that is very rare.
I value his contribution for that reason. He does seem to have nuance. He has insight on how this could play out. He sees the game theory pretty clearly. Also, I would say, there is the fact, which I think he shares with us, of having pointed out how our vulnerability in the West was inevitably going to lead to the exploitation of our weakness.
Yeah.
And, we've been pointing this out since 2017 in public, that yes, you can play games all you want with sex and gender and race and mathematics and science, but you can't do so without making yourself vulnerable to people in the rest of the world who recognize weakness and cultivate their own strength and take advantage of you when you're distracted.
Yeah.
So
we're busy pretending men are women, and we do not look like either a serious or a strong people.
We are not. We are not. And I will repeat that if you want a society in which you are in a position to experiment with things like gender, then you do not weaken your military strength in the world. You need a strong masculine military to protect your right to experiment with important parameters at home, rather than just declare that this is the new wisdom and it will be imposed across everything at all scales, which is the height of insanity.
Indeed. Okay, next question. John McWhorter calls wokeism a religion with racism as original sin. Is vaccination a purification ritual?
Well, I will draw my usual distinction here. I don't think these things are religions. I think religion is a time-tested cult. And the point is, these are cults. And just like you can't write a myth, you can write a narrative, and if it is time-tested, it becomes a myth. That effectively, there is it may be Ryan Bennett who coined the term a religion-shaped hole. There is a religion-shaped hole in us that gets filled with something. It can be filled by a cult, and the cult can be predatory, or the cult can be
filled with religion.
It can be, but let's take Mormonism, for example.
Yeah.
Right? The beginning of Mormonism, you could argue, hey, that's just a cult. You can't say it's just a cult now, right? It has stood not a long period of time, but it has stood the test of a certain amount of time. It has accomplished things that suggest strongly that it is a religion.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is, look, the vax thing is a cult. And so many of these things fit that rubric, including wokeism, very clearly. But it is important to distinguish between the time-tested article and the newly emerged foolishness.
Yeah. Could wind farms block or redirect vital trade winds and really screw things up?
I hesitate.
I don't think trade winds, right? I think trade winds are higher, but currents, wind farms are lower to the ground.
I don't think trade winds are higher.
You don't?
Because I think trade winds are named that because of their blowing of sailing vessels.
Oh.
But
okay, you're right.
So let's put it this way. Anytime, if you're going to address an energetic problem of planet Earth with some kind of solution, whether it's solar panels or windmills or whatever it might be, in order to get the kind of scale you're talking about, you are talking about disrupting the underlying process from which you are taking energy. Whether you get across a threshold in which that matters is the question, right? And, there's an awful lot of tidal energy, for example. Heather, you used to talk about the possibility of capturing tidal energy. And the point is the tides flow in and they flow out. You can capture a lot of that and not mess the world up. Well, presumably,
I think actually there's a risk of messing up the organisms wherever it is that you've got those big turbines.
I'm not. Right? I'm talking about global processes. Yes, I mean windmills kill bats and raptors and stuff like that. You disrupt lots of stuff with these.
But
things.
You're not going to screw up the tides. You may screw up the organisms in the particular place where you are, but you won't screw up the actual tides because you can't do that by putting stuff in the water.
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. You're taking energy out of water in motion, but there is so much, water is so dense and so much energy is represented there that it's almost inconceivable that you could drain enough out to substantially alter the underlying process.
Right.
Wind less so, but still it seems like scale-wise it's unlikely. On the other hand, as we warn in our book, at the beginning of a process where you are in no danger of changing something by virtue of scale, you ultimately could scale up to a place where you do, and it's important to spot that possibility. Yeah, no, I was looking at something when you were talking, but I think you alluded to, gas is compressible, air is compressible, and so you will more easily move aside wind than you will move aside water by running it through a turbine. Yep. I'd love to hear your views on the morality and legality of abortion. Love you both. I am going to, because we're trying to get through this quickly. I mean, you are welcome to speak as much as you like here, Bret, but I'm going to direct you to this piece, which I wrote in 2018. Are you in there, Zach? Yep. You want to just show my screen for a moment? So I wrote it in August 2018 on abortion, time, space, error, and ethics. And I stand by what I wrote then, which is to say that I am pro-choice, but I would hope, but I know that it's not true. But like everyone who is pro-choice would like to minimize the number of occasions when such a choice should need to be made. Yeah, I would say this is an incredibly complex issue. Most reasonable people come down in an intermediate position where there is some right to terminate an abortion, terminate a pregnancy very, very early while we're still talking about, cells. And there is some point at which it is too late to do so in good conscience. Obviously, in hunter-gatherers, there's even been infanticide, which was not done lightly. So the point is we are in novel circumstances and we can afford limits that are narrow and protect our humanity from our technology. That said, I don't think this argument is well addressed because I think conservatives are saying something that liberals either can't or won't hear about what happens to us when we have control over reproduction at a certain level. And obviously, I believe control over reproduction is essential for things like the equality of women. It's essential for planning a modern family, right? Rather than being hobbled by children. It is essential for rapists not to have a way of spreading their genes. There are lots of reasons that it's essential, but I do think we radically screwed up civilization by not recognizing how much hinged on the previous logic before we had reliable control over birth, and that we have done an appalling job of figuring out what we did to ourselves, what the net effect was, and how we might mitigate the harms. We've just done a terrible job.
Yep. Why do we not simply allow trans women to compete against trans women and trans men to compete against trans men? The main reason is there aren't enough, right?
I think we do. I think there are not enough, so these competitions don't exist. But
there aren't enough, so the competitions don't exist.
But I don't think anybody's stopping it.
Yeah, but no one's stopping it. There aren't enough, but the unfortunate secondary truth is that some number of trans women are competing in women's sports precisely because it confers an unfair advantage to them. I mean, the Leah Thomas example is unfortunately very, very clean. This is a person who competed as a man and didn't win. Declared themselves a woman and is winning. It's not like declared themselves a woman and discovered a new sport and was like, oh, let's see if I can also, be an athlete as a woman. No. This was a young man who was an athlete who wasn't winning. He was a middling male athlete who became a championship trans woman athlete, not a female athlete. Obviously, if there were actually enough trans women and trans men in all the sports to compete, that would be the thing to do. But there just aren't enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Given how much of ideology is based on emotional insecurity, what do you think of the idea of free access to mental health services for all?
I wish I thought mental health services were on average helpful.
I was just going to say, I know of, I think I've mentioned this before. My oldest, dearest friend is, and I know of another that makes two clinical psychologists I know of who are extraordinary and who are helping people, who are just doing extraordinary work in the world. And I assume they're not the only two. But it's clear.
No, I think we know a couple of others by extension.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's lots of excellent work that happens not within that narrow framework of like clinical psychology, right? There's other work that happens that just isn't called that. But given that the market drives mental health treatment in the West, and it's far easier and cheaper and quicker to run down your list of possible diagnoses, check it, see what pill to prescribe, and send them out the door. That's the nature of mental health treatment for too many people, and that's clearly, actually, and actively disempowering and bad for mental health, rather than the opposite.
Yes, modernity puts the mental in mental health.
In a legal sense, I tend to think of marriage like a corporate merger, reorganization around a union of assets. Mobil might brand as Exxon or else hyphenate like Exxon Mobil.
Well, obviously there's room for a rebranding. You could,
I think the piece that's missing from that, and it sounds trite, and I'm not the first person to use this, but I really do believe in the there's now 3 entities, and 3 entities, each of which have agency and interest, and 2 people come together, and those 2 people still exist, and they are hopefully and presumably transformed by the partnership. But the partnership is its own thing. And, in our case, I am my own thing, transformed and affected and changed by you, but also my own thing. And you are your own thing, transformed, and whatever the other words I used were by me. And we also, co-build the thing that exists neither more in you nor more in me, which is our relationship. And that, no, I can't name the individuals, the three individuals. There aren't three individuals. There are three entities.
My individual refused to make all of the jokes that you set me up to make because I'm better than that.
But you're not.
A little.
It's probably too late. The timing's off.
Oh,
you want to make one?
Absolutely
okay.
not.
Yeah.
I won't do it on principle.
Yeah. You can't have it both ways. Either they're gone or you're not doing it on principle.
Well, I didn't do it initially on principle,
Yes.
and now the timing is so egregiously bad that I don't do it on that principle. It's two separate principles.
The principle of self-degradation, not wanting to self.
Right.
I resist the desire to self.
I hear enough crickets as it is. I'm not going to inflict crickets on myself.
Are you kidding? Right now, it's the frogs that are ringing.
Yes,
it's
they are.
Springtime here.
Yeah.
Oh. Excuse me. Why do you use the term lived experience? Is there unlived experience? And if so, is that also a common term? Seems off for some reason. Yeah, this isn't our term. This isn't my term. Hi. It's it's what people are saying, and it's used stupidly. It's used, and in fact, we heard this at Evergreen when Evergreen blew up. And even we were beginning to get intimations of this in classrooms beforehand, where people were actually arguing in an academic setting, no less, that scholarship, that thinking, that science, that evidence had no bearing, that the only kind of evidence in order to assess something like what is the history of Native Americans in the United States is the lived experience of extant Native Americans. Like that is the only evidence that's possible. You can't use analysis. You can't use methods that have been derived by, granted, maybe, dead white men. You're not allowed to use that. It's only lived experience. That's backwards and anti-academic and anti-intellectual and just anti-reality. That said, I therefore, and I think I say it more than you do, I will use it as a sort of a nod to, of course, there is a place for, and of course we do find interest in the questions that we find interest in, which we may then investigate with, for instance, scientific methods, because of the biases and developmental experiences we've had, which together comprise our lived experience.
Now, I'm realizing in this morale,
sitting there smirking.
The paradoxes here are so many, but okay. So they deplatformed these burrito-making white women in Portland.
Yes.
For cultural appropriation, burritos not being native to their lineage. But it seems to me, I really feel like what we were doing as professors was democratizing the tools of science that, yes, happen to have been innovated by some white European dudes, but isn't that the point? If the idea is you're not allowed to appropriate burritos from Latinos if you're white, but given that the white dudes, engaged in bad behavior that put them in a position to have an enlightenment.
Don't you want to take the best?
Yes, shouldn't we be appropriating their scientific tools? Isn't that the right answer?
Yeah.
That's my lived experience, by the way.
It occurs to me, you probably don't want to do this in the Q&A, but we did not get to one of the things you specifically wanted to talk about in the first session. You
mean the fact that I have been permanently and most extremely canceled?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's not the right place to do it. But okay. I have suffered a near fatal cancellation.
It really wasn't that bad, but it's remarkable.
It's remarkable. It may show up in the news. I don't know, but yes. Stay tuned. We'll talk about it next week. If I have, I don't know, what do they do? I guess, canceled is the stage before they declare you guilty of malinformation terrorism. It's the one too.
Guilty is? Did you say? What is the stage?
They cancel you.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then they declare you guilty of malinformation terrorism, which avails them of all sorts of...
No, I think they already found you evidence of that, and that's the basis on which you were canceled.
Oh. No. I don't think so at all. Because
Shows what you know.
in order to convict me of malinformation terrorism, they will first have to admit that what I'm saying is true, which they haven't gotten around to.
Well, so they're convicting you of misinformation terrorism. Doesn't matter.
That does sound like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank information terrorism.
Exactly.
Your prefix here, information terrorism.
Right. We've settled on the fact that what I'm saying could make a person distrust their government. We just are disagreeing over whether it's true or false. And at the point I win this one, then it will be malinformation terrorism.
That's right. That's right. When did we start, Zach? I said we were going to go for 45 minutes. Was it 11:45? Yeah. We're at about a half an hour? Okay, good. 119 isn't prime, but it is a semi-prime, the product of two primes. That's cool.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Am I going to have to start checking for that?
Apparently. Would you ever do a podcast with Dr. Peterson and Professor Jonathan Haidt? Totally.
Sure.
Yeah. Please explore. Oh, this is a tiny little question. Please explore the evidence which says that sexual orientation is immutable.
Oh. There ain't none. Or it's not very good because it's not so immutable.
Yeah, it became. I don't know the history. I don't know the history of thought on this, but we happen to have lived through, and I can't even tell exactly when, but early in our lives, sort of the point at which it became the thing that you understood that this was, that, born this way, right? As opposed to the effect of, parenting, this, that, the other, development, whatever. And frankly, it wasn't something that I think you had, but I just went the sort of born this way line, didn't give it too much thought. And then it was actually reading Douglas Murray's most recent book, The Madness of Crowds, which is excellent, in which he, a gay man, says, actually, I'm not so sure about this. And I don't know if he says, but I sort of get the sense that he goes, I don't even know where the evidence is.
Right. Well, it's also,
I don't know,
multiple things. One, it's very hard to have evidence of this, given that we all have a period of years before we can articulate anything like sexual orientation, and we don't have a clear memory of those very early years. So who's to say? Second of all, there is a fair amount of evidence about events that change sexual orientations. Third, there is the very fact of Douglas Murray, and you would be surprised how many men tell me that they're not gay, but that Douglas Murray makes them think twice about it. It is not I've never said this, but it's not an uncommon thing for straight men to say.
Are you serious?
All right, I may have said it a little more extremely than they say it. They say things like, if I was going to be gay, then
he would be just my type.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's what you get from straight men.
I don't get that from straight men.
He's a pretty cool guy.
He's awesome. Absolutely. What I hear is straight women going like, man, too bad that guy's gay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Which frankly is easier to get to than what you're claiming.
I agree. I find it a surprising thing, but I have heard it more than a couple times.
Okay. I just had the question. Where did my question go? Oh, here's a comment. Okay, I had a question. Oh, here it is. But here's a comment first. Your Q&As remind me of car talk. Your mix of whimsy and deep systematic knowledge is great. 2 notes. Could you have a weekly puzzler, can be submitted by listeners, and could add employees like statistician Margin Avera. Margin Avera. Man, it's been so long since I've listened to car talk. In fact, I met a couple of women this week. One a Portlander and one her sister who lives actually up in Olympia. Awesome. It was great conversation. I don't know if they're watching, but and I said something about back in grad school I listened to hours of NPR every day, and it's been years since I've been able to listen to any of it. But car talk was one of the things I listened, and one of these sisters mentioned how much she loved car talk, and I'd forgotten about Margin Avera.
Margin Avera, yeah.
Now great. A weekly puzzle. I can't remember their puzzlers though. I'm having a hard time remembering what they were.
Oh, they were automotive primarily, right?
Oh.
You know,
yeah, we
set
have to
of
specify like an
symptoms.
organismal puzzler or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I
like the idea of
automotive
this.
ones.
No, and I like this. We have to. I'm not going to. I don't know. We're not going to develop the puzzler now, but I like the idea.
Yeah.
I like the idea. Okay. Please provide a back. This is the question I was looking for, which isn't a question. Please provide a backstory for each of the catchphrases, e.g., Goliath, First Against the Wall Club, featured on the merchandise in the Dark Horse Podcast store. So, do not touch anything anymore. So one of them is First Against the Wall Club.
Yeah, First Against the Wall Club, which I must say has caused some consternation. But the basic idea is that your fear is being used to manipulate you into doing the bidding of powerful entities that are dangerous to your planet, your family, your descendants, and that at some level, at some point, you're going to have to stop cowering. You're going to have to stare into the abyss, and you're going to have to say, you know what? I cannot protect myself from these people. You know, I can make myself safe in the moment by not crossing them, but I can't make myself safe in the end that way. So I might as well call their bluff.
I'm going to stand up. Might mean
to take the lyrics of one of my favorite songs, which I will leave oblique, but people can search it up. And if you come for me some night, you better bring a shovel and be expecting the worst. Because I got you in my mind's eye. There you go.
I don't know the song.
It's a good song. But anyway,
I probably know the song. I don't know what
so
song
staring down a frightening enemy is basically the point.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I'm going to just look at a couple more because
Sure.
the question was explain. Your algorithm's no good here.
Yeah. The idea being that we are all being manipulated by entities, powerful entities that use algorithms to shape our mindset, and that you owe it to yourself, to your family, to your friends, to have a mind that is not easily manipulated, right? To remain independent and to render their malware useless.
Indeed. Then we have Goliath, written in Google font and colors, the back of which says, "Don't be evil. We've got that covered."
Well, that sword there hangeth still above the dark horse. Why? Because Google demonetized us and threatened to purge us, and has still not remonetized us, has basically gone radio silent on the question. And, you know, that's them being evil and trying to stamp out voices that they don't like. So anyway, they are functioning as Goliath, and Goliath, you will notice, is not a person in modernity. He is a giant collective, and David surely we will be too. Of course, if you go back into our earlier podcast, you will find that David is the construction. David is a real historical figure, but his showing up as Goliath's antagonist is probably inaccurate. That it was Elhanan who actually fought Goliath, and then Elhanan got wrapped into David's character.
Yeah. Okay, let's just do two more. Not questions, but things from the merch store that I'm finding as I'm scrolling through. We have "Saddle Up the Dire Wolves, We Ride Tonight."
Well, "We Ride Tonight" is actually an allusion to another excellent song. What is the title of that song? I will think of it. But "Saddle Up the Dire Wolves" is obviously a bizarre reference to the Game of Thrones, in which dire wolves make a prominent appearance.
No, they're never saddled.
Never saddled,
No.
as far as we know. And what was the last one?
Oh, the Epic Tabby.
Oh, the Epic Tabby. Well,
Is he not, though? Is he not epic? Oh, he's sleepy.
Something about
Sorry,
these
sleepy Epic Tabby.
unassuming tabby cats, basically a regularly occurring kind of cat mutt, that often has incredible characteristics. They have some great personalities. They're very innovative and
insanely smart.
Yeah, very smart. And so anyway, there's something about it, just a really high quality rescue animal.
And extremely snuggly, especially in bed after having been outside and having collected paws full of dirt. Did it to me again last night. Dirted up the bed. Okay. There's a number of questions here that I don't understand what they mean. I think there's some words missing. So let me I'll read two of them. We have a couple more minutes. If track record isn't on the judge's scorecard, shouldn't we focus on what is? I guess this is a reference to...
Yeah, I know what it's a reference to. No, because the point is, you can't win the power game through merit, and you can't win the merit game through power. That's really the point. And it's the people who are already in power who made the categories on the scorecard. So right, and they claim to be playing the merit game, and the point is, it looks like they're playing the merit game because they're shutting out anybody who's playing according to the real rules of meritocracy. And so, in some sense, the point is, okay, you can win the game, but it doesn't make you insightful. Yeah. So track record is the way to tell.
Okay, we'll do one more here. Hi, what is your opinion about Novavax versus immunity via infection in terms of risk-benefit? Does the protein-based vax change the equation?
I have still not looked. Yeah, I looked into Novavax months ago and have not reminded myself of it. My sense was I wasn't that excited when I looked at it. I had trepidations. Yeah. I would also say I don't think, I think we do know that there was a campaign to obscure the value of natural immunity, but I don't think we know anything about how this works long term. Right. I don't think we know what they've just signed us up for by running out the clock and allowing this to become endemic. I don't know what the variance game looks like in light of weak and weakening vaccines. And I mean, to the extent that natural immunity is extremely protective as the virus continues to evolve, it can evolve out from under previously acquired natural immunity. And in fact, Omicron has been widely discussed as, and anecdotally, we've heard lots of stories of people who did get COVID once in 2020, 2021, and then got it again once Omicron came through. Yep. And even worse, the stupidly broad tropism of this virus means that if this thing does that trick where, like the common cold, it mutates so that you get the common cold regularly because you're effectively dealing with new variants, if it does that, and then each time it infects you, all sorts of tissues which aren't really involved in viral transmission, but the virus doesn't know any better than to leave them alone, are damaged, then the point is this becomes a serious health crisis, and even beyond what it has already been. Yes. So anyway, yes, the people who mismanaged this, the cost of what they have done wrong is incalculable. It is. Okay. We're going to cut it there. Cut it there. So that we can not miss our ferry. Yeah. All right. All right. So thank you for showing up early this week, if you did. And we will see you next week at the normal time at 12:30 p.m. Pacific. And I'm sure there are more things to say, but we will just finish with be good to the ones you love, eat good food, and get outside. Be well, everyone.